And hopefully that will allow you to hear have some hooks to hang the details on that we'll talk about next. So with study permits and visas, I'll just mention briefly, you might know, there is a difference between a study permit and a visa for Canada. And the visa is that almost like that concert ticket that you need to get into that great concert you want to go to. You buy the ticket outside of the concert venue somewhere, and then you present it to the person standing at the door and they let you in, but they don't pay any attention to what you're doing once you're inside. That's that visa. For most of you, that'll be a shiny sticker that gets pasted or glued into your passport. And then a study permit is what tells the Canadian government what you're allowed to do when you're inside the country. So you don't need to keep a visa all the time. It's only used at the border, kind of at the door of the country, but you do need to keep a study permit that's valid all the time that you're in Canada. And the study permit ends up looking like kind of a pinkish piece of paper that you actually get handed at the airport or border as you arrive in Canada. So for study, and now when you're out of Canada, when you apply for a study permit, the Canadian government will automatically issue you a visa, kind of throw it in for free with no extra application. So it's a single application when you're outside of Canada. So it seems obvious, but do apply right away. If you haven't yet put in your study permit application, then in most cases, we would encourage you to do it today. And Abdullah mentioned that we have the UBC International Student Guide. And if you put into a search engine UBC International Student Guide, it should come up eventually. And on that, we have step-by-step tutorials that explain exactly how to apply for what we call an initial study permit, including what documents to include, how to fill out the form, all of that, even what to do after you apply. So we encourage you to apply right away. We do know that many of you will be waiting for additional documents that are part of the study permit application, but you haven't been able to collect yet through no fault of your own. So we know that the visa application centers, for instance, in India, have been closed for quite a while. We see some reopening signs, and that's always hopeful. So do watch the visa application center web pages to see when they would be opening up and apply as soon as possible for example, your biometrics appointment. And I'm sure you know biometrics are that fingerprints and photo taken at a very specific place to identify you. Medical exams, if you haven't yet been able to take a medical exam, and if you need it, then again, be watching for when those Canada approved medical exam facilities open up. They call them panel physicians on the website for Immigration Canada, as you probably know. Students have been asking us, well, what if I applied for a study permit a while ago or took a medical exam maybe more than 12 months ago? Should I be getting a new one? So here's our general advice, and this may be different in your case, but if you have already taken an immigration medical exam and an officer is not requesting that you take a new one because your old one is more than 12 months old, then our office would say, in general, we are not seeing a need for students to retake a medical exam unless an officer is requesting it. And certainly if you want to be very cautious, you could retake a medical exam so that it's more current, more than 12, because they do expire after 12 months. We are not seeing students having difficulty by presenting or using an older medical exam in general. Some of you might be waiting for IELTS or English language test results, and some of you may be waiting for offices to open so that you can send your passport and have that temporary resident visa, which we also call TRV, to be attached into the passport. So For all of these things, biometrics, medical exam, IELTS results, TRV, this is when you get to practice your meditation skills, your patience, your watchful waiting. And as soon as those facilities open up, then sign up, make an appointment, do what you need to do, and submit that to Immigration Canada as soon as possible. The Immigration Canada is well aware that many of those documents are not yet available. They are not changing their requirements at this time, so you will still need to present them, whichever of those is on your list to present. Now, some of you have asked, well, what if I've applied for my study permit before classes start, let's say in September, but I don't have an approval on my study permit yet. I'm still waiting for the decision. Can I start attending classes online at UBC? The answer is yes. The Canadian government has no authority to tell you what you can do outside of Canada. So when you're physically outside of Canada, you can study, even if you don't have that study permit approval yet. We would urge you to make sure you've applied as early as possible, and that you apply before classes start, because that might affect some of your future opportunities in Canada, like a post-graduation work permit. But if you get to September and you don't have an approval yet, you are allowed to start studying online. And if you're admitted to UBC, which I assume most of you are, you must have a study permit approval and that temporary resident visa, if your citizenship requires it, before you travel to Canada. So do not travel to Canada as a visitor when your intention really is to study, because that will be seen as lying to the government, and that's a very serious action to take. And it's quite likely that you would be sent back to the country you've come from and not allowed to enter. I'm going to turn things over to Abdullah so that if there are more comments he wants to make about study permits and visas, he can do that, and then he can talk to us about courses.
Thank you, Michelle. This is very helpful. As Michelle was talking about the medical exam, and quickly, I've seen some questions about this. For the medical exam, if some of the students are asking about where they can find a certain form, we're talking about two things. First of all, completing an upfront medical exam, where you don't need a form for that. You contact the panel physician that Michelle has talked about. Once you complete the medical exam, you might get an e-medical report you can keep for your own record. Other students might be waiting for a request from the visa office. They get a form to contact the panel physician and complete the medical exam. This is just, I've seen some questions about that. I just want to make a quick comment. If we can move forward to the next slide, Michelle, thank you. So Michelle has mentioned and talked about being able to start your program before getting your study permit approved. While Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada is well aware of the current situation and delays that students may have because of the domestic closure lockdown in countries outside Canada, they have put in place measures to facilitate the students' ability not only to start, but to maintain their eligibility, for example, for post-graduation work permit. So one of the things that you may consider, if you cannot travel right now to start your program as scheduled, you may choose to start taking courses online. One of the things that you may want to keep in mind is maintaining full-time status, especially if you want to apply for post-graduation work permit. For undergraduate students, this means 9 credits per any winter term. For graduate students, that means maintaining registered or continuing status. So this is one of the things that you want to keep in mind. So what if you cannot register insufficient online courses? Then we would encourage all of you to talk to your academic advisor to discuss what options you have, what alternative courses you might want to take. Academic advisors are also available to help and navigate what other options you might want to have. One of the things that you might want to also keep in mind that um, some of the courses that might seem to be online might have an in-person component, though this is also very important thing that you have to keep in mind and check before you assume that this course is fully online. Of course, you can check the course syllabus. Make sure that the course does not have a lab component that requires being in Canada in person to complete that component. You may talk to your academic advisor about that. But in concept, uh, uh, taking online courses in winter term 2021, and as we know from Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada, those courses will count towards the length of your post-graduation work permit until December 31st, 2021. So while we acknowledge and understand the difficulties that you're going through due to the delays of processing your study permit applications, we also know that there is an alternative option for you to consider. And that's why we want you to navigate this option and see, what if I cannot start my classes in September? Michelle? For travel and arrival plan, this is also a gentle reminder for all of you to make sure that you prepare yourself before making any travel arrangements. Look at the UBC's Travel to Canada during COVID-19 guide. Look into what you need to prepare, what documents you need to have. Look into the self-isolation plan. Where am I gonna stay? What housing options do I have? Booking your flights if you have a connection flight in a country where they have certain travel restrictions. Please make sure to look into that. Right now, you notice when you book a flight, you might get a pop-up message. Okay, you're going to be transiting through this country. You need to have this and this. All of this is something we need to do before making any travel arrangements. To this moment, travelers to Canada would need to book a 3-day mandatory hotel stay. Those hotels must be government approved, not any hotel. And after the 3-day mandatory hotel stay, you would head to your self-isolation residence to complete the rest of your 14-day self-isolation. That would be 11 days. So the third 3 days would factor in when counting the 14-day self-isolation. Book a self-quarantine location. This is mandatory. Check the BC Ministry of Health guidelines for what you need to do or what can do, how you can, what transportation options you have from the airport, for example, to the hotel, and then from the hotel to your self-isolation housing. If you have been vaccinated before traveling to Canada, please make sure to bring a record of your vaccination history. This is very important. To this moment, being vaccinated, partially vaccinated, is not a requirement to travel to Canada. Those vaccination records would help you continue what you have started, would help health officials here determine what the next steps for you should be. Can you, if you got your first vaccine shot, can you get the second one here in Canada? What's going to be at the same time, different type. The type of vaccine you have taken outside Canada is not one of the, let's assume one of the, not of the ones being administered here in Canada. This will be something health officials or a Canadian doctor would help you see what your next steps should be. The good news is vaccination is free to anyone who's resident in BC. You don't need health insurance. You don't need to pay any fees for that. All what you need to do is to register, and then you will be contacted by the Ministry of Health. You'll be directed to a local clinic, and you should be able to receive your vaccine shot. Another important point that we need to keep in mind in terms of the current travel restrictions is having a COVID-19 PCR test taken within 72 hours before boarding your flight. This is very important. You have to time the test to be within those 72 hours. Otherwise, the airlines might not accept tests that were taken beyond this 72 hours window. All of this is well presented on our International Student Guide. Again, I do encourage all of you to make sure that you go over our International Student Guide, travel to Canada, self-isolation, UBC student housing, what options they might offer for you. Look at the frequently asked questions. See if the question I have is something another student has asked before, and we have answered that. If you still have any other questions, please reach out to us, and we'll be happy to help. Michelle.
Thank you, Abdullah. Your event organizers, UTSAF and Pakistani Student Association, have already been collecting questions, and as excellent hosts that they are. And so we'll start off answering those. Abdullah and I will take turns, each answering one. And then we will be able to open up to any other questions that folks have on the line, and we'll leave that to the UTSAF and PSA folks to moderate and feed questions to us. So these are unfiltered questions that have come through from you. So what should students who haven't gotten their visa stamped into their passport yet due to suspension of passport collection do? So as we know, some of the facilities where passports or where visas get actually pasted in or stuck into